I think it's important to train youth workers. It's a complex job. It's not just sitting around playing pool. It's saying the pool is the medium to talk to you about you, and then I'm going to subtly work out how can I be of assistance, how could you develop your own ideas.
And even if you're not sure, sometimes leadership is about saying, I'm absolutely certain.
We've got approximately 150 students here at the moment studying for a youth and community work degree, and also we've got a small group of master's students who are studying at postgraduate level to qualify as youth workers.
So what I was going to do a little bit now is just talk about some group work theories.
What we'll see on sort of graduation day is the people walking up to pick up their degrees from the youth and community work team look a little different to everybody else. So we've got a high percentage of ethnic minority students and, bluntly, young people from working class backgrounds who perhaps wouldn't have felt that university was for them. And that makes it particularly satisfying when you see them succeed.
Have you heard that? Forming, storming, norming, performing.
Teach you a lot of the theory and sort of underlying philosophy of youth work, really, and ranging from all sorts of different things, from sort of safeguarding to sort of psychological theories and sociological theories as well.
As opposed to thinking of it, how can we lead the children?
To be a better youth worker, I kind of felt that I needed to kind of put my head in the books more and kind of understand the psychological and sociological around it, rather than just being young people.
In 2010, we applied to the European Commission and were successful in getting probably the largest bid that definitely this department and this university has got.
The main thrust of this research is to look really closely at how youth workers are working with young people involved in street violence and how we can help them improve how they work.
And specifically, the group of youth workers we wanted to work with is street workers. So it's those people who don't work in, say, a youth club, but it's those who actually work with young people on the streets.
Does street-based youth work, and we've used the term street-based as opposed to detached youth work, is in the EU.
So the main researchers on this project are myself, Pete, and Mike Seal, who's the programme leader here at Newman.
We are going to be supported by a steering group who will meet several times, and that will be made up of policymakers, practitioners, some young people, us as a research team, and academics who are experts in the field. Well, we're quite keen that the actual results and recommendations from the research don't just address an audience of academics. We're also keen that practitioners who will be working with young people will reflect on and maybe even change their practice, and that policymakers will hear some of the messages as well and change the way that policy is done.
We're aware that young people who are involved in street violence might find talking to people like me and Mike difficult, or they may not want to. So we're really keen that young people feel comfortable to talk, and we're going to achieve that by using young people to talk to them and ask the questions of them, and we call that peer research.
Today we have come down to Bradford to meet Haki, who's the youth worker here in West Bowling, and to meet the young people, just to get to know them, tell them who I am, the peer researcher on the project. I'm also a youth worker.
And the theme of the project is street violence and young people. The difference about this project is it's going to heavily involve you guys, young people from Bradford, North Islington, and from the other partners as well. So you're going to be involved in this process.
My name's Sab. The reason I'm here is I'm from Newman University. I've just done my BA Honours there, doing my Master's degree, and also working on this project, hopefully with you guys. The reason why I've been chosen for this is because I had involvement in guns, gangs, drugs. So leaving all that behind is why they've brought me into this project, to hopefully speak to you guys and help you guys and learn from you guys as well, see what's going on as well.
Today's session's about creating a brand name for the project, creating a logo and doing some merchandising.
We didn't want, as researchers, to come into these young people's and youth workers' lives and just watch and observe. We wanted them to be involved right from the beginning in all the decisions about how the whole project should run. And that included even what the project was called and what it would look like in terms of its project logo.
hopefully we can get the name put together, because at the end of the day, this is their project, this is basically their research.
And just when face touch, you just do one black and one white.
Yeah. The name was Touch, and it was supposed to represent, you know, the two hands coming together, and it's like it took quite a bit of meddling about it, but then at the end product is alright. Nice.
The logo we come up with was two faces coming together like this, and then in the middle we had Touch on there, and then underneath it we had like Feel the Peace.
Feel the peace, quote of mine.
It gets the message across.
Touch, feel the peace. Those words go together, don't they?
Yeah.
The partner that we're seeing is an organisation called Ryan Flanker. Although we've spoken on the phone lots and we've done a lot of planning, this is the first time we've actually come to meet young people and to meet the youth workers and to begin the research. We knew that they had a specific methodology in terms of how they worked, which was primarily based around sport.
Usually I have 3 different jobs at the same time. I'm a member of one of the teams, then I'm the referee, yeah, and although I'm like a sports commentator. The smallest kids I play with, they're about 6 or 7, and the oldest are about 20 years.
This kind of work is a long-term investment. When these get older and they want to move into the youth centre, they've already got some kind of relationship with the youth workers, and I think that's really important.
If you only let them play football, I think it has nothing to do with violent prevention. But using the sport as a platform, then I got them, and after that I can start with my educational work. Sometimes it comes over a point and they're not engaged, they're aggressive. That is, interrupt the game, and then that is a point where I can start with violent prevention work.
And it's all about Dennis's personality. If you watch what he's doing and what he's saying, he's there making it happen, making it more fun. It's just good group work, good youth work.
A lot of young people we're working with, they would be thrown out of a structured football club very quick. That's our job, to accommodate those young people and to make sure that they still get challenged by their behavior.
We've just come to Coke. It's an evening session where they play football.
Sport involves some kind of rules. If you're going to play, then you need to abide by.
A lot of rules get broken by the young people. And then we can use that to start the conversation with them, to find the link to the other part of life when they don't play football. And what happens if you break the rule?
It's not about which team scores more. It's more about being fair play, no tackling that shouldn't be done, no swearing, no fighting. So even if the team is 2-0 up, they can still actually lose at the end of the game if the fair play system works towards the other team's side.
The approach they take does encourage the young people to think about how they approach the game. What I haven't really seen yet, which I still am looking for, is evidence that the youth workers are able to use that piece of work to build good, strong sort of relationships with young people, which then have the potential to really get at some of the underlying issues. I want you to think of one young person that you have worked with at any point in your work that you think has experienced some form of violence in their lives. I asked them to draw an individual young person. And what it did do, it really gave them a chance to put the image of that young person in their heads, and then they could really think about the circumstances around that person.
There are all his victims, even girls. He didn't targeted them, you know, he just picked them. He just picked them by accident.
What did he do?
He beat the shit out of them.
And then we had other workers talking about building up the self-esteem of young people, trying to do activities that increase their confidence, trying to give them sort of responsibility for things.
I got to know him when he was just out of jail, and he joined our boxing club.
Heiner and Christina, they have a minibus.
On different days we have different villages where we try to have a nice time with the kids, and by the way, maybe improve their social intelligence and social sense. Yeah. Sometimes they have bad upbringing, they have trouble in life which they didn't cause because they're too young, but still things are going wrong already, and especially then it's good when they see some people are really interested in my welfare, in my happiness.
Yeah, I talk with Heiner about many things, about problems, and he understand with people.
Well, as Rheinflanke always approaches with sports, we have sure a lot of footballs, volleyball, basketball, and sure boxing gloves because I work as a boxing trainer.
Macht so wie der letzte Mal auch gemacht hat. Macht beide fast gar nicht Kopf, Kopf nur so ein bisschen zeigen.
That kind of session probably wouldn't happen in the UK for lots of reasons. Boxing, for instance, in public space would probably attract the attention of local residents, and the police would probably have been called. Young people probably would have been moved on.
Heiner said he's actually spoke to some of the neighbours and he's explained to them why they're here, what they're doing, and the neighbours are very happy for him to be there.
Some people will clearly think it's not appropriate, think that it's encouraging forms of aggression. Heiner's interaction with the young people turned that from something which could potentially turn quite nasty into something that was genuinely educational, I thought. He had in place kind of tacit boundaries on what was acceptable in terms of behaviour, and he didn't need to make those particularly explicit. They were clearly just there in the context of his work that he's been doing with them already.
Wechsel.
We have found out that there is issues of violence. They have spoke about issues of bullying in schools. They've talked about issues of seeing street fights on the streets, issues of gang fights on the street, whereas drug-related issues, and that shows that there is a lot of violence happening in Cologne.
Sab has been growing in confidence throughout the whole project, and I felt this trip he really came into his own because he has experiences that we don't have, and that gives him a perspective on the experiences of the young people that we don't have. And he's a born researcher. He will just sit and watch and observe, and he only really believes what he can see.
We've come to Islington, and this is the detached session where they bring out the bus. The guys that we were supposed to meet haven't actually turned up today.
Types of young people that we're working, there could be a number of issues why they don't turn up. They could have issues at home. If they're involved in crime, they could be in a cell somewhere. You can't predict when they're going to be about, but that's why you try and build that rapport and that relationship to basically ensure that they do turn up to most of your sessions so that you can continue the work that you're starting to do with them.
This project was set up so that we can respond to where young people are. And young people will move around because of postcode wars, because of issues that are kind of going on, perhaps in the borough.
We've seen it ourselves in Cologne. Heiner and the team, they do the same, but this is a lot bigger than what they have.
It allows us to access some of the young people, in particular in the winter where it's very cold. It also allows us to have a closed space. So if you're working on a particular subject, i.e. drugs or alcohol, you can work with a group in a closed session because you can't always deliver some pieces of work on the street.
These guys are doing some fantastic work with these young people. Young people know people who genuinely care. It is evident to see here.
It's all a voluntary basis. If they come, they come. If not, but they still know that the service will be here as usual the following week as well.
There was a famous philosopher who said if you deny people's public space, you very soon start denying their private space. And that is a form of violence. The reasons we chose Jurgen Street Work was they very exclusively look at the street as a place to work and operate from, and they see the street as a place for young people.
We are focused directly where they have their life. Outreach work in Graz doesn't wear any uniform. We have one sign, this is the rucksack.
With our blue backpacks, the kids can tell that we're working. In our backpack we always have a first aid bag, always hygienical things, candy with our address on it. We even have lighters for them because cards didn't lose them. And Friday night it's very busy with the condoms.
We are going out with some practice to do some outreach work. Oh, I'm excited now. I'm really excited, and hopefully we can start building a relationship with young people.
And then they cross the square, and that's.
We stopped at a bus stop. Is one of their stop-off points. They sit on the bench for a few hours. Sometimes they say young people are there, loads, and then sometimes there's none.
The locations where outreach happens is that strange mixture of public and private. There was parks, there was at tram stations. Young people almost deliberately choose places where it's private enough that they can create their own space from it and have conversations, but public enough that they're not in danger.
They only have to work with us if they want to. And the most important thing about it is building a relationship, so a trustful relationship. And then they know they can talk to us about everything.
I see them 4 times a week because they're nearly every day out. They're nice and they will help you. If you have some troubles at home, they will try to give you some help.
Sometimes if there is any crisis, we try to walk with them, maybe to have a coffee for relaxation, or we bring them back to the contact point because there are more possibilities to come down.
The young people can come there just to hang out, or they can take showers there, they can wash their clothes there, use the internet, use the telephone, use us as the council persons. The difference between the contact point and doing outreach work for us is when they're coming to the contact point, it's our rules. Drugs, alcohol and violence is forbidden. When we're going out on the streets, we're going to their area. So it's their rules, so we need to respect them. But of course, always it's possible to tell our opinion that we're not okay with it. We only get along street violence sometimes. Most of the times we manage to cut it before it really happens.
We have a lot of examples that it works, but I think it's the challenge, the big challenge, to sell these results, because you can't see it when you do it. Comparing it with housework. If you do housework, if you wash your dishes, if you wash your clothes, nobody will speak about it because you should do it. If you don't do this work, everybody will talk about it. So this is a big challenge. We have planned an event, a big event in the city of Graz, close to the opera, to the House of the Opera. It's a really big cultural building and a touristic building.
This means youth culture in between the high culture takes place in public space. And this means youth are invisible or visible.
The way that it had been advertised was quite interesting to me, because it was definitely high culture, our culture. Is there a contradiction?
We use to carry out all our sofas, to bring it inside the greens and inside the public space in front of the opera. We want to force their opinions and the talking about public space. People who take part in this event or read about it should think in their brain, why do you use the public space? It's not only a space for traffic, it's a living room, a very necessary room between school and parents, for example.
Our sofas are symbolic for our contact point, so for a part of our work.
We're going to try to make the place cozy with our sofas and food.
I think it works quite well. A few of them relax just in our chill-out area, and we can talk to them, drink something with them.
Was ist los? Ich rauch so viel, ich krieg Raucherbeine. Was ist los? Das ist die Session jetzt in Graz.
With graffiti workshops, with beatboxing, with street dance. There will be artists to educate the youngsters if they're interested.
What has surprised me is that especially when you do a project like this, where you do it across different cultures and across different countries, is you think there will be a lot of difference.
It did shock me that there was so much into hip-hop, because they really, really are. And even some of them, the way they dress is very typical hip-hop wear.
At the end of the day, there's a lot in common. Having said that, there are some things to learn. There are some very interesting ways that they work with young people here, which doesn't happen in the UK.
It's meant to be nice and cozy for the young people, but also to show society, people coming by, that there is the public space, and the public space should be open to everybody.
I have seen a few older people who are interested in our event today, and we try to talk to them about our work, try to explain them our work.
There's different types of violence, and one of the violence that we look at is social violence, which is what violence is done to young people in society. The event that was done outside the Opera House I found fascinating. It was saying, whose culture are we talking about here? Whose culture is important? And then on a wider level, it's whose space is this? This is meant to be a space to share and understand culture. And yet what can happen then is people make complaints saying your culture is too noisy, and the police turn up saying, can you take your culture away? Although to be fair to them, I think they came because they knew they had to come. But we have talked with the workers who've had other descriptions where there is fairly harassment of young people for being in public space and told you shouldn't, you should go home, why are you here? I'll arrest you if you don't move. The main thing the event achieved for me is it helped us build relationships with young people, so they'll talk to us. We actually were able to do some direct research because some of the conversations we had with young people were around violence, which we have captured in different ways. They were in public space and they were starting to ask themselves questions about whose space is this? So I think it will mean that the conversations we have will be more in depth because they will understand and react to these things.
Newman University is named after John Henry Newman, who was recently made a saint by the Catholic Church, which was why the Pope was over. The Catholic ethos sort of remains in terms of a sense of mission to the local community, and the kind of courses that we offer here often have that kind of helping profession angle as well. But of course we're working in a community that's multi-faith, and our course is multi-faith. As you can see here, just by the books, even though we are a Catholic university by name and by nature, there's a lot of work that goes on here which is based on the thinking and philosophy of other religions, Judaism, Buddhism, Hinduism, Islam. So I suppose faith is central, but not necessarily one particular faith. Although Birmingham and youth workers in Birmingham aren't actually partners in this project, obviously Newman University is in Birmingham, and it's an opportunity for us to engage with our local community in Birmingham. Alum Rock in Birmingham is an inner city area. It's Sab's community, it's Sab's home, it's where he grew up, it's where his family is, and I think it's important that Sab gets to show the partners his own background.
Go up this way, I'll show you the mosque as well.
It's also an area which in the past has suffered from a degree of violence and criminal activity.
Every youth club has been closed here in Alum Rock. That's the only one that we saved. We don't have a football pitch here anymore. You know, most people from other areas, they think it's dangerous to come here because they're very scared, but the guys from this area will go to other areas. They don't care. Well, this is where I come when I was young, and it made a difference for me. I don't know if anyone's going to be in there because they're all on Ramadan, and I think they all got leaves. They do the best work I've seen. Awesome worker. It wasn't just youth work for him. A lot of my family lives that road there, then my road there, so we're all very close here.
For me, it was a new experience. Today is one corner, and you're in a totally different world because we don't have it at home. Well, this is like little Pakistan.
Alum Rock, it's a community that you wouldn't find in Germany. It's 99.9% of Pakistan people who live there. That's, you know, in the middle of Britain. That was very, very interesting.
It's really different. I think you have to interact with other people, that you understand their culture, that you understand their living, that you understand their problems. And I think you can only solve this if you mix people together, yeah?
The youth workers from Bradford, for them this will be quite familiar. I mean, there are a lot of similarities between Alum Rock and the area of Bradford where Aki and Nisara are working.
I wanted to involve West Bowling for a multitude of reasons. From a research point of view, it's quite interesting because they tend to be working with Pakistani young men. But it's also interesting from a particular kind of inner city, northern perspective, which I think has another dimension to it. There were the Bradford riots a number of years ago, some of which the young people here were involved in, and some of the people the young project work with are involved in.
We'll be taking some of the young people up to Kendal. We're going to go to a residential for 3 days.
I think all of the young people on the residential have been involved in street violence in one form or another.
I've been involved in a series of things, gang violence, drugs. I've seen and witnessed more than I should have for my age. I got beatings from my dad not to go on the streets. I used to still sneak out because I was so into that lifestyle. I try my best to avoid the lifestyle. Nobody can keep away from it. Something's always going to come up.
One of the large methodologies we're using is peer-led research. So in a lot of ways, the person who's doing the research here is Sabs. So in a lot of ways, I'm here to support him.
This is going to give me and the other workers a chance to get to know the young people better. So hopefully we can speak to young people about gang violence and what is violence to them.
I'm worried about it kicks me. I look funny in pink, don't I? Oh, pink!
For the youth workers, it's important to use outdoor activities and residentials to make young people feel comfortable and be involved in a project like this.
This is obviously the most important piece of kit for us. It's pitch black down there, you won't be able to see anything, so we've got to look after the life of the battery.
No, I'd rather sit here and enjoy the views rather than go down there.
first thing we're going to hit is an entrance to the cave called the Banisters. It's about 30 foot in height and drop. And at the bottom there's a massive plunge pool.
I started getting cold and I wanted to turn around and that, but then I thought, well, I'm not going to do this again, so I might as well just carry on, make it through all the way to the end.
I didn't really want to do it at first because I didn't want to get wet. I was thinking of them Chilean miners. Get on the phone to them Chilean miners.
The abseiling, because where we were, it was just like wicked. I've never seen something like that in the quarry. All the slates and everything, and the beautiful stuff to see, the nature.
Sure, you think that you're storming an embassy, something like that?
I think some of the young people were very scared to do that. They were talking about how you should hide your fear. Don't let someone see that you're scared, because that's a sign of weakness.
If I fall in it. I won't be saying that when I'm on there.
I made it!
I nearly bottled it. And when it come to the time of, leaning over the edge, I thought twice. Whoa, it's going loose. I don't think I'm going to do this,
I know, man. You're up there,
My heart was beating so fast I felt like it coming out my chest. The lads, friends and youth workers and everybody else, they encouraged me, they gave me the motivation and the confidence to do it. Felt proud afterwards. I could conquer my own fears and I proved to everybody else.
The last experience a year ago which I had in abseiling, my finger got trapped in the rope and the bone snapped in half. For me to go back was good for me. Even if you're scared, it's still an experience.
Getting to trust us. A lot of the conversations up a hill, halfway down a mountain, having breakfast, have been about what do you think this violence is? What does it mean to you? In terms of research, that's all part of getting them to a point where they can talk about what are, at the end of the day, pretty difficult experiences.
If a mate rings me up today and says, oh, so-and-so's got trouble and so-and-so's this and that, so I'm going to go sort them out, then I'm going to help them out. Because just that respect and dignity that you got with your mates in it, the stuff that I've done is built a little respect. I ain't got loads of respect out there like most people. I'd love to. I'd love to be known as untouchable and that, you know what I mean, around Bradford and that. That little reputation that I have got, I'd rather keep it. I'd rather have a reputation than no reputation in it.
One of the other merging themes from this is that people who've had a direct knowledge and experience are the best people to learn from.
I've been involved in fights. I've been involved in very, very bad fights. There's so many things that I've been involved with, and I can relate to a young person. If you're an aggressive person, you don't have to go around fighting people, causing chaos, causing mayhem. You can go into a contact sport, boxing, karate.
Youth worker like Nissa, Sab from Birmingham, they've been there doing it. They've been there for, them way more experienced than us. We're only 18, they're 20-something.
If I want to know something, there's no point going to someone that doesn't know anything about it, but someone that's experienced it, it's better off going to them. Because the way I look at it is, if the youth worker can change, then I can change.
They've made loads of mistakes. The only way they've learned is when they've made the mistakes. So they've learned what I don't know. So they'll teach me that knowledge.
This concept of violence, young people's involvement in youth work.
There will also be a number of formal points where people will come together for discussions, and those are going to be largely led by Graham, who comes from a particular view around what he calls community philosophy.
How do we, it's an interesting word, engage young people who have committed violence?
An idea happens and you stay with that idea and you build on it.
He'll tell me to go do something, I said no.
Right.
And then he'll say, if you don't do this, I'm going to do this to you.
He put pressure on him to do something.
Putting pressure. Right. What form does this pressure take?
I think it was exhausting. It was confusing sometimes. But everything got together because we stayed on one subject at a time. And like you said, brick on top of brick, we don't want to start a new conversation. We kept that going, we kept on discussing, kept on reflecting.
The question is it's small, but the conversation went on for about an hour.
What does committed mean? When you hear that word buzzing around you there, what does it mean?
Being married.
Being married. Okay, so why is marriage like committed?
It's just like Honour, respect.
Honour, respect.
Just like loads of like questions, and well, Graham's like that, innit? He's like, when you give him an answer, he's going to turn it into a question and ask you again.
The importance of loyalty, trust, economics, the importance of community and family were all coming up as big themes. Interestingly, the very themes that actually I think youth workers can be quite good at working with.
We've come out to the national park, where it's a youth hostel, with a group of young people that we met on our first visit to Cologne. The young people that we have got now here on this residential with us have been experienced, or they have seen certain violence in their home countries like Russia or Algeria, but they've also experienced and seen violence where they're living now in Germany.
Boxing I like because my father was a fighter in former Yugoslavia. Since I started boxing with Heine, I learned to control myself much better than before, really much better.
They hardly know me and Pete, so we can't just come here and ask them questions about on-street violence. So our intention is to do some activities with them. I think Bradford is very similar to where I come from, and coming to Cologne, it was more of a challenge to get to know the young people.
I believe I can fly!
It's good for the project because it's a similar thing that we've done in Bradford to do the research, and it's a similar thing that we have done now in Cologne to do the research. So we haven't used anything different in either place, so we can compare both researches very closely now.
It was very, very, very good.
Canoeing was the biggest, I think it helped the most.
How to get in the boat. In the boat you need teamwork. It's important. It's a good thing for young people, because here they learned that they are responsible for themselves. If they don't hear at me, and if they don't do the job in the boat, they swim, not I.
It's about two people in one boat, you're both partners, you both have to cooperate, you both have to work together as a team. So overall I think this activity itself has helped the whole group bond together. It's something they didn't ever want me to do, but I used to go to school. This is at the age of 13 I started, 14, and it was me and 3 other friends. We just started to do stuff, you know, to make money, and 2 of my friends actually started at the age of 15, started to sell drugs. That was in the school. From school they got kicked out. But after I spoke to them about my experiences and what I've seen, sitting with them, having a laugh and a joke with them, I think they got more comfortable with me. I got more comfortable with them, and from there we just started to talk. I've got a few interviews done, and they were speaking about violences they've experienced here in Germany on a race issue, on a personal issue, and issues that they've faced with the police.
My cousin, when my cousin get catched by police, the police hit him, punched him, really, and with the
button.
With the button.
So we were just walking on the street while Frank and Pete walked along, and I was just talking to them about the area, how nice and quiet this area is. And then they said, yeah, this part of Germany, you get nice parts, but then they started to speak about their own parts. And from there, he just started to open up and started to speak about what he's seen and how he feels the police and the people in Germany treat him.
When you fight against a German, the German hits you first, and you just defend yourself and hit him. You get catched. You get to prison, just because you're not German.
This I think happens all over, doesn't it? It's all the same.
We're about halfway through the project. We're about a third of the way through the analysis, and what we're doing is going to meet with the practitioners for the next 2 days. So here we are in Graz again. This is the third time for me, first time for Pete.
We've made such a strong bond. This is my second home. I could actually leave everybody and go around.
This is the first time that all of the youth workers from the 4 partner projects are all coming together.
They can share experiences and share their work and see that they're doing very similar pieces of work.
For example, the colleagues in London, the things that they use in their work to reach the young people and to build up a trustful relationship are the same. Just talk, be real, taking care.
People actually can get to know each other and share ideas, and then when they talk in workshops afterwards, it will be informed from the discussions in the pub the night before.
We've looked at all the data we've got from the practitioner workshops, and we're going to talk to them about what we think we've discovered so far.
The focus of this conference is around what practitioners are saying on the topic of violence, okay? What do we need to do more of? What do we need to do less of? I'm not saying we have things that we shouldn't value in what we've done, but what we need to do is concentrate down on thinking differently at points. Because what we want to do is say, these are the problems we're encountering, these are gaps. This is what we've found so far, what do you think of that?
We're kind of narrowing it down now. The questions getting short, so it's like filtering and getting to the key questions. My group focus was relationships.
It was very clear very soon that it's about active listening, really kind of reading between the lines and feeding it back so that the young person actually feels heard and understood. We all shared the same views on that, you know, so that was interesting.
The theme that I done at the workshop yesterday was around boundaries, and I had like Roger and these guys from Islington, and they had a lot to say.
We've had really interesting discussions with workers in London, for instance, about seemingly silly things like having an ID badge, for instance, or a sort of risk assessment policy in a particular, how that can actually impact in a really fundamental way how the worker can work effectively.
So that is always pulling us back from actually opening up ourselves and then allowing ourselves to be put in that vulnerable situation where trust can actually grow.
Because it's participatory action research, there's a sense in which the very process itself is having an impact, even before the research findings get written. Sab and Rich are going through major personal development. When you speak to the youth workers, they say just by being involved in the project, there's major transformation in their own personal development.
The youth club was closed because the major at that time, she thought this is a hot spot of gangsters, so I closed it and solved all the problems. Well, it's completely nonsense. to talk about it, to show others and to see what other people do, and this exchange, this is, I think, a very good benefit for me and my project and for my colleagues too, I think.
Is that we work with young people to reduce violence.
Everyone's just learning off everyone, everyone's got something to say, everyone's got a story behind them, and I'm learning from these guys, and hopefully I can give something back to the project as well.
In Graz, we've been really interested in how they focus very much on this notion of public space. They see their work as reclaiming that public space on behalf of young people, and that's really part of them trying to alter and change how society and how the community view young people within it.
We are at the town council buildings where the Parliament for Graz meets, and we're here for a mayoral reception.
Yesterday we had our monthly meeting. Many decisions were made. There was actually only one point where everybody agreed that there should be more space for young people.
Miss Sissi Potzinger, she is a politician and she invited us in the name of the mayor for the city halls.
How in other areas they try to take public space away from young people, and what they've acknowledged here, even if it's in a symbolic sense, is that actually giving them public space helps us work with violence and makes it dissipate. It is a part of the solution. So thank you for having the foresight to acknowledge that.
You're very welcome.
For me, I don't want research to be something which is just some academic articles written on it. It needs to have an impact on the real world and young people's lives. So the fact that even that vote has happened, to me, illustrates that we are starting to make a difference. Some of our messages are being heard. The more we can get a message where people can understand this is what young people are doing in public space and it's important to keep it, then the more we'll have an impact. There's a feeling of things coming together. You know, it starts to have a wholeness to it. You feel as though actually there's still some more pieces to put in the jigsaw, but I can see what the picture is. And for me, that is quite heartening. I can see what direction it's starting to go in.
I have the power. I have power.
I can make people win.
We're here at Cardfields, which is a large house out in the Essex countryside that Islington Council use to bring young people to get them away from the urban environment.
We're here for probably the most important part in some ways of the research. So this is the point where we bring together the practitioners and the young people and do some workshops to try and take forward some of the issues that we've already uncovered.
I don't really spend much time in the country. Normally I'm Islington based, went to school in Islington. This environment is nice, it's nice and different, it's calm. No, there's not all traffic outside, bibbing, buses, you don't hear all that noise, it's just peaceful. It's nice.
Yeah, it gives you a lot more time to think, you can act yourself and just do what you got to do really, without no one watching you.
It's very calming, I think, coming out here. And we can sit down, we can have discussions, we can do exercises. And, everybody has to move out of their comfort zone in a sense.
All the things that they used to do and have respect in a certain way don't quite work here. So we're starting to see some group dynamics of people coming to terms with that. And there have been really positive things of people getting together, starting to talk, finding commonalities. A bit of friction here and there. That's okay.
The more activities that we do and the more workshops we do, I think there'll be a lot more respect between everybody.
Run! Relax.
The activities that they'll be taking part is in canoeing. There's a trip for them to go down Southend, I think. We've also got the London Eye for them to see.
They're playing hoop games and games with pipes and
building trebuchets, which is ancient medieval weapons, and they're going to throw water at each other, which should be quite amusing.
At the beginning, it was every group of the different lands were together. Yeah.
We actually mixed and done activities together, so we had to work with them. And some of them, they didn't talk our language, but we just had to communicate in a way to do the task together because all the tasks were team tasks.
So far so good, I think we mixed quite well. I haven't really got to speak to everyone, but yeah, I think everyone's just come here for the same reasons as me really.
Well, all these activities that we've had, like the campfire, the team building games today, are all trying to bring the group together so they feel more comfortable with each other and they can start talking to each other.
And the topic will be, stemming a bit from last night, is what is violence to you? Which could be physical violence, could be mental violence, all kinds of violence.
This is really the final part of our sort of data analysis. This is the culmination of everything really. So obviously we've spoken a lot to youth workers about their views, but we really wanted to hear most importantly from young people.
Well, I got told basically I'm going to come and talk about street violence in my area and just compare and talk and see what others are like and how others are coping, for youths, and yeah, just see other people's point of view really.
The topic violence is very interesting, and yes, we all know something about the topic, so that was the motivation.
We have a lot of knowledge in this topic, so to share our ideas with everyone else is a good thing.
We will see you back in here in about 40 minutes, okay? So just before 10:30. We've got some of the main themes that we think are coming out of it, and it's actually just going down to some more depth about what does this actually mean.
We're going to focus on their experience of state violence as we see it, so their sort of how they interact with the police or how the police interact with them.
How they see violence in terms of public space. So when does it happen? What spaces do they go to avoid violence? What places are pretty problematic for them?
Okay. Why do you have the casino?
Because it's a big problem in France for young people.
The discussions in the groups have mainly been on violence.
Witness is quite a strong word to me. Yeah?
We had discussions this morning in my group especially about when someone witnesses a type of violence, what are they meant to do, what path are they meant to go down?
I'm going to have to tell you, why are you going to snitch on me? Because I care about you and you're going down the path that's leading. Now that's kind of a different way.
To have a conversation about violence, it's not something you would bring up in day-to-day conversations, so when someone asks you about it, it's more like you have to stop and think. They're still going to look at it as in he snitched on me because he was the only one there and I got caught. I don't know him, but I know he was there because I see him there.
Just you walk off. I think that's what it could have been.
It's like a topic where it can lead so many ways. It's got so many different ways to go down and what causes it, what problems. There's always something more to say. There's never really one answer. Sometimes it's not about your mood, sometimes you just have to if you see someone that you don't get on with. So it doesn't really matter about your mood sometimes with that gang circle.
We're going to try and bring things together a little bit just to talk about, actually, okay, so this is what our experience of violence is. Now it's going to be what can workers actually do.
What is it about their sort of relationship with youth workers that means that the youth workers can have that impact on their behaviour? And that's going to be really important for our research.
If you're being attacked and you hit someone back, that might be a justified form of violence. Self-defence, yeah?
Youth workers are often very empathetic. What they're trying to do is understand a young person's life world. But if they're doing things that are violent or would be considered immoral, you don't want to collude with that. There have been big issues that have come up about things like, you know, when do you trust a worker? Which is, you know, given that there's sometimes illegal activities, that's quite testing. What are their boundaries? Which youth workers get through to you? Which ones don't?
Winning team through.
It's so good, I've run out of paper.
When I woke up this morning, I found myself thinking about what speech I might make when we finally sort of do this big conference at the end and present. And obviously this is a research project, but I kind of think that probably the first 20 minutes of that speech will be talking about what great youth work this has been. All these young people have all had experiences that I think are really transformative for them in terms of sort of meeting other people from other cultures, being asked questions and being asked to think about their own experiences of violence.
As well as making friends and new friends from Austria, Germany and London, that they can learn about, you know, the impact of violence and looking at solutions and interventions, and they have some of the solutions and we need to just pull that out and tease that out from them.
So the data that we gather here, we're hoping will form the sort of centrepiece of our data, which over the next few months we're going to start a detailed analysis of that, which then gets written up into the final report.
Them wanting to work with us and solve this is like it's proper good. They want to see how we feel about it. We don't really get asked normally, how do you feel about this? Do you mind if we do this? It's normally us getting told we have to do, never ever getting asked for our opinion.
Stuff like this is important because they'll tell people above them and then they'll make like things that we want to change and they'll make it happen, like make it a reality. It gives us a voice, and like maybe we couldn't speak to them directly, but now we kind of can. We've got like a say in the matter.
When I first came to Islington, it was really difficult to speak with young people. There was a very much standoff. There were very much kind of what was my motives, what was my intentions. So my job was to build that relationship. I left my emails, my number, and we started to talk over the phone while I wasn't in London. When you actually commit, they feel that they're actually worth something. That hopelessness that we've been seeing is now saying, well, actually there is good practitioners out there that actually do care about us, that do actually want to work with us. Let's see what we can actually probably tweak. Or we're doing a music workshop and it's based around the project on street violence. We've picked a couple of guys from Islington that are very articulate in their music, which are taking part in talking about their experience on the street and how life is for them on the street. The guys that are here today, they're in a different patch in Islington, and it was said that they'd never come here. So to break that barrier and get these guys here today is an achievement in itself, where everybody's excited, their work ethics, they're ready to work and to understand what this is all about and put the work in. So hopefully today we'll come away with the songs being ready and prepared so we can produce an album. We looked on contents and what real messages they really want to send, and is that really them, or is that somebody that they've seen? So it's finding their own identity and having something that they can own for themselves and having a platform where they can voice their opinions and to be heard. I hope that it's a message which will encourage other people to let young people have their voice. You let young people have their say.
Survivors in my tunes, survivors what I do. Product of my environment, I know I pay my dues. Pain in my voice when I'm spitting on the tune, I ain't a liar, so if I ever spit it then it's true. This is for my people locked down in the system. The criminals to you, but they're my brothers and I miss them. For real, I was mother off in piss when space of 2 years it took a lot more than 6 men. It's hard but we have to stay proud. My life was hard but I know a lot's changed now. I never used to have the new shoes that came out. Got a PS1 when the PS2 came out. Vowed to never be like this again. Show my mum that giving birth to me will never be in vain. But I don't want my little bro to mimic me.
We're going to use the lyrics that young people have said and put that in part of our research and in part of our dialogue and in part of our data.
I think the Touch Project is actually a really good project that gives people that wear suits and that don't really know about the streets and all that good insight into what's actually happening out there, instead of them just prejudging without actually even knowing anything.
He's given us the freedom for us to have our creative space and do what we wanted to do, and he's helped us and he's educated us in a way that we can use to help and progress in the future.
He just taught me a lot. He's been trying to educate me and show me that there's other paths of getting certain stuff done instead of just the music. I can get into courses and loads of other things. It's just giving me an insight into the academic world.
Been to many places you wouldn't like to go. You wouldn't like to see things that my eyes saw. Living life get broke. You wouldn't want to die poor.
The visit I did here in London for a week when me and Richard come down to do a bit of research with these young people was actually the week that made me make my decision. Yeah, this is the kind of work I want to do. This is the kind of young people that I want to work with. This is where I want to make a change. I've been now in Islington for the last 4 months. I've actually got a job here now as an Islington detached youth worker. I've come here now to do a job and I've left past my past. I mean, if I was still in Birmingham and then trying to do a job as well, I've seen people on a regular basis that I was involved with before, which I don't get that anymore here, so it's like a fresh, clean start. The trip to Germany is actually what inspired me a lot to watch Heine off a little truck where he was taking his pads and his gloves and doing his boxing. Here we do a similar thing. We bring the truck down, we have our pads and gloves on the truck, where I do one-to-one sessions with the young people where we take them on the pads. I don't think respect just comes like that. You know, young people will respect you when you actually start delivering the work. You know, you start doing your job.
I was walking around the estate actually, and I saw Sat, and he walked up to me and said, would you be interested in coming to boxing? It's local. And I said, yeah, cool, well, I'll be interested, and I just came along.
It's a sport at the same time, so it's not something that we'll use as abuse on the roads and stuff. We'll use it as something like self-defense, if you know what I mean.
boxing is also all about the teacher, how the teacher teaches it. It's telling the young people about discipline. It's about telling the young people just because you know how to punch doesn't mean you go out on the street and punch.
It's mental as well as physical, so obviously you are throwing punches, but I mean it's all to do with like willpower and smarts as well. You've got to know when to hit, how to move and everything.
It's always been for me that I always wanted to start something like this, and today you can see that it's actually starting to progress and starting to fall in place.
We're going to Brussels, to West Midlands European Centre, who are one of the partners on the project, and we're presenting our findings for policymakers.
I suppose what we're hoping is that some of the policymakers take on some of the issues we're saying and take it on board, and even maybe change legislation, or at least have guidance.
It's been 2 years and we're excited because this is what the project's all been about, which is trying to get some change at a policy level so that youth workers can work with violence in a more effective way. So we've brought young people, youth workers who have been involved in the project.
There's an organisation who is coming called Dynamo, a federation of detached and street workers across the whole world, but concentrating in Europe. They've already talked about maybe translating it into other languages and getting it put out through their networks.
And we're hoping that some people from the EU Parliament will be here to hear what we've got to say after we finish the project.
The aim I've got for this afternoon, we have a brief amount of time. We will be looking at some policy recommendations, which for those who are policymakers or involved in networks, we would like you to consider. One thing we're suggesting is that every quarter or every 6 months, young people, workers and policymakers get together and say what's working, what's not working, how can we do things differently.
It's very rare that the voices of young people contribute to the decisions about the policy. We should learn from what's happening in the street with young people and youth workers.
We also hope that out of that we may get some what we call occupational standards for street-based youth workers, which says this is what street-based youth workers should be doing in their day-to-day practice, and obviously the findings that we've got will inform those.
We've also got some recommendations around how they fund things, and one of our findings is that you need to have a longer-term community approach.
Often we say, okay, here's money for 1 year, and we want you to do this and this and this in 1 year. And everybody's like running like this, but young people, they've got problems that sometimes we need to take time with. So the best solution to that is always to try to give the workers time also to spread their work out, ideally over many years.
We've also got some recommendations around training.
We need to get some policy systems that support people from these communities so we can help them to get good training and education, and then they can use that with their experience to get on. Street workers from around Europe are telling me we want to keep learning, because if we keep learning we can do better work.
And one of the big other recommendations we have is around public space itself.
Is it possible that we could actually lobby together to actually say, as a group of street-based youth workers, we want something said about young people's right to be in public space?
Actually, it's all achievable. The things that we could do to work effectively with violence is not saying fund something that does and spend loads and loads of money. It's actually saying do what we do, but do it slightly differently. Keep doing what you do well, and think about a few things like this.
Run B, yeah, TLD. check it out, Friday night so blue. Thinking to myself why these words so true. Looking in the mirror like, oh damn you. Fell for the trap and he went straight through. Pops telling me he ain't got long to live, so I fight with my heart, I gotta make it quick. So if you think you got the game, I'ma take it, bitch. I make broke look good on some wavy shit. And don't ever feel money will change the kid. I forget that, right now I'm here just boozing. Sipping on that yak just to heal my bruising. Forget all the pain and the times I was losing. See right now, man, I'm choosing to put all my heart and my soul in this music. Trying to be, I could be one of the greatest. Upgrade the game, I'ma give it a facelift. Make the world feel like when the head changes. And right about now, I'll be going through stages just to hold down a part-time job for wages.